All right, I think, ooh, yeah. Hello, guys hear me? Can you hear me? Hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me? All right. Welcome everyone to day 2 of our AI Symposium here at Ringling College of Art and Design. We have some new guests with us here for the morning. I'm gonna say, hey, Ringling College alumni, welcome. Raise your hands if you're here as part of Alumni Weekend. So that's exciting. For those of you who are new to the event today, my name is Rick Dakin. Among other things, I'm the AI coordinator for Ringling College, and I helped organize this symposium. We had a lot of great talks yesterday. All of those talks will be available on YouTube, on the Ringling College YouTube channel. There's an AI Symposium playlist, so check those out. They should be up in a few weeks. And we're excited to have a lot of really great talks here today, starting with a Ringling alum, Miguel Elasmar, who I'll introduce here in a moment. So to give you a sense that today's going to be kind of more fast-paced than yesterday. So Miguel's going to give a talk, and then we're going to go into, bear with me, I'm trying this out. What do we think? The fast and the curious? All right. We're going to do 25-minute talk. Yeah, he gets it. 25-minute talks, a lot of great, interesting topics. You can see them all on the back of your badge there. So without any further vamping by me, I want to get right into it. So I'm going to introduce Miguel Elasmar, who, according to this piece of paper, has over 2 decades of experience as a seasoned UX/UI product consultant. He specializes in bringing software and hardware solutions to market for companies from early-stage startups to large international healthcare installs. Working as a fractional resource, he helps founders and CEOs go beyond design by offering creative consulting on strategy, marketing, and general pipeline process improvement. When he's not helping his team succeed, Miguel is an active student mentor and a die-hard heavy metal drummer. Welcome, Miguel Elasmar.
Check, check. Thank you, Professor Dakin. How's everybody doing? Good. It is my job to wake you up. It's a tough competition. I believe that the largest cars and coffee in the area is happening right now. So hopefully we will keep you awake. So semi-soft skills for the future creative, kind of like a cheeky title for a serious presentation. Before anything, thank you for putting this together, Professor Dakin. This is awesome. Yesterday was incredible, super insightful. So thank you again. And to the folks from Dream Large for such a great party. So let me start with a quick note here. So as you know, we're in a bit of a transition. As my buddy Eric Smonson says, we're kind of like in a place where the Christmas ghosts are all together at the same time. And so any of the concepts and ideas that I will present here will invariably change at some point or evolve. But I do want you to take home perhaps the framework so that you can adapt it to your own professional life if possible. So another note, it's my design context, as Professor Dakin introduced me to. I'm a product designer, so my experience is user research, user experience, user interface. I kind of specialize in healthcare. It's what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so. Software, hardware, mostly software, and I currently run my own consulting firm. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about, including my very own definition of design, is going to hinge on this experience. So this is a fun little piece right there. This is my Christmas card. Some of you maybe have seen it. And I used to do this probably since 2012. And this is a very dear piece to me. I enjoy doing it every year, and it takes me about a week. It's quite a bit of work. I have to take the photos, I have to grab Mr. Pineapples, who doesn't like to be pictured, move him around, come up with an idea. Each year has a different theme, and obviously send it to print with a beautiful UV gloss where the plastic is and a matte paper where the rest of the print is. It is a full size, kind of 5x7-ish, so it almost looks like a card or like a action figure. And then I put a note in the back. I love doing this almost every year. Sometimes I run out of time. But as you know, as I believe this year, GPT released just a method to creating your own action figures in a split second. So this is a bit of a interesting piece to me because I enjoy doing it, but now everybody can make an action figure in two clicks. So probably something I will continue doing just because I love it, but I can't deny that it had, the thunder has been kind of lost a little bit. Okay, so quick agenda, we'll do the intro, the framework, the skills, and then if time permitting, we'll do a Q&A. So, the intro. This entire presentation is to try to add value to the design professional. So, I want to try to do that by illustrating the importance to learn skills adjacent to our professional roles. Also, add value by applying creative problem solving to much larger and complex problems than at the organizational level, and by encouraging designers to find a nexus where creativity and personal time can exercise systems thinking, which I think it's a big deal, something I'm going to be talking about quite a bit. So let's recap what the skills are, the hard versus the soft. The hard skills, duly represented here by a small block V8, is where you put your 10,000 hours, what you study, what you work on, is that toolbox that make you that professional that's highly specialized. Versus the soft skills, represented by Mr. Pineapples, who's a very soft cat, are more abstract, they're harder to measure, and they're generally taught. It's what some people would call experience, and there's some that you can certainly learn, but they're a little bit more abstract. So I have a theory that some of the harder skills are starting to soften due to all the automation tools that are available. And also some of the softer skills are starting to harden because those are going to be what makes you probably a more docile, well-rounded professional for the next era, if you will. I am representing that by semi-soft skills with a semi-soft cheese. That's what I call the automation equalization. Truthfully, this is just a blatant excuse to make the most bizarre diagram you've ever seen in your life. But I am an optimist, and I believe that this equalization has an opportunity for us creatives. So let's talk about the framework a little bit. Does anybody know this gentleman, Victor Wooden? One person there? Anybody? No? Okay, not a jazz crowd, okay. He's an amazing, amazing bass player. Some would say the best bass player in the world. But he's also a fantastic educator, band leader, and he seems to be a really cool dude. I am a drummer, and around 2010, 2011, I started playing bass. Started to learn and trying to do things. Speaking of complementary skills, a good drummer should know a little bit of bass. A good bassist should know a little bit of drums. We are the rhythm section. We are the ones that are moving you, making you dance. So Mr. Wooden had a DVD that I came across back in the day where he was giving his pupils, a group of maybe 10 professional bassists, the challenge to improvise on top of a chord progression. So he noticed that they were all struggling because the first thing that they did was to try to find the right note, try to play the root, try to follow the progression, make sure that they don't play any sour notes. So by doing that, they all sounded really, really bad. At least the 2 or 3 bars that were trying to figure out what was going on, it sounded really bad. So Mr. Wooden came up with a framework to explain to them that although they were looking at the notes, there were other aspects of music that they ignored. So then he proceeded to play over that chord progression, playing only the things that they omitted, and quite literally playing all the wrong notes. He's that good that he can play a sequence where he knows that all the notes are wrong. But guess what? What he played was perfect. Like you were like, oh, this is cooking. This is very, very good. So that to me, trying to learn bass, I'm still pretty bad at it. This clicked to me in a different way. This to me was like, wow, I wonder if there's an analog to design, and if there's an analog to the stuff that I do every day. And I believe there is, but it took a long time for me to really distill this process, or this framework, if you will, into what we do. And I think with the latest generation of automation tools, it kind of has clicked even a little bit more. So I came with the periodic table of semi-soft design skills. Kind of fun little exercise. They're not, some of them you could say they're skills, some of them are professions, but bear with me. We're gonna probably focus on the top 4 just due to time, and also the bottom 3 are fairly self-explanatory, although incredibly important. But let's go ahead and get started with the first one. So the skills. We're gonna start with the hard skills because it's what everything, the entire framework hinges on, by contrast, right? So in the context of design, at least for me, working in software, this has always been a very, very dear part of the process to me, which is to be able to iterate, get my hands dirty, start with V1, do a review, get some feedback, do version 2, version 3, try something new, and then before you know, you end up with a different output than when you started. And that process right there, to me, is incredibly important. So what is our beef with automation as designers, as artists, as creators? Is the fact that the new generation of tools are quite literally just kind of removing that from the equation. And that's really the part that we as creatives enjoy so much. We do this, we often say because we love it, and that's quite true. I think that the previous slide showed you us playing, us being playful. And again, this is something that a lot of these new tools are kind of stripping away. So it creates a dichotomy where in our daily lives as design professionals, we're being pulled to one side with our need to play, our need to be creative, and then on the other side, our need to pay rent. They are no longer kind of living in the same universe, and this is something that I believe is what creates a lot of the apprehension that some of us may have towards some of these new tools. So this dichotomy, although I do believe that as a concept, the split of play and work, if you will, or creative and systems thinking, which I will hinge on later, I think that toothpaste is out of it. Like, you can't put that toothpaste back into the tube. But I do believe that there's a way to make sure that these two things coexist, at least within you, so that you can still play and you can still pay the rent. So let's focus real quick on hard skills. These are some thoughts, concepts that I have that I think could be useful. Is to stay up to date with the latest tools. Obviously, don't bury your head in the ground. Know what's out there, know what's relevant to your tool, to your trade, to your clients, to something to make things more efficient. Play and learn with set tools, but remain open. Like I said at the beginning, this is a transitional stage, and I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and not everything has settled yet as far as like what tools can do what and automate what. There's gonna be likely a bit of a Boeing versus Airbus at some point, but right now we have a lot of companies and a lot of kind of conflicting concepts. Work on dissecting problems logically and in writing. I think that this is quite important because a lot of that process that kind of got removed, you still need to think about it, but you need to think about it in a declaratory way as prompts, whether it's going to be written or it's going to be spoken. That's how you're interacting with these machines, and you need to extrapolate that process and a lot of the variables and items around it into words. So I think dissecting problems logically and in writing is pretty important. I believe that's part of what Professor Dakin teaches here in his class. So how does this also kind of work with your clients? Or your employer? Be part of the discussion. So make sure that you're part of that process of transformation, that you know what are the tools that we're going to be working. If you have suggestions, bring it up to the table. Don't be that person that is just quiet, sitting there, kind of looking like, I don't want to use this, because it's just not going to help you. Just be open, right? Become a frugal consumer of credits and tokens. At some point, if you work for a team that is paying for a subscription, and you have to do some like deep stuff, you really need to pay for a lot of these queries. The more efficient you become about being efficient, the better or more competitive you're going to be within your team. So even within the automation side, you could still optimize and be a more valuable player. And then for your users and customers, A lot of times you have to determine if these tools that you are using, especially if they occupy a really broad spectrum of the process, are what you need. Like if you're doing an e-commerce website, very likely you can crank out very quickly because they all kind of look the same. But if you're doing a process-oriented workflow for a cardiologist office to optimize billing, that's very custom and very unlikely that you will be able to get an end-to-end solution through some of the latest automation tools. So how do we go into those hard skills to make sure that we stay paying the rent, stay employed, and also bring that fire from creativity back to your lives, especially if we feel that some of it has been taken away from the day-to-day design process. So I believe personal time is very important, and the hobbies and activities that we pick in our personal time are key. So my suggestions here are to pick a hobby that is very creative. You really need to channel that fire. A creative without a creative outlet, it's a dangerous thing. So make sure that you do that. Pick hobbies that also could develop systems thinking. I think that's super important for the future, especially as designers, and just a little bit more on that later. Complement digital with analog and vice versa. I think if we are on the computer all day and we can pick a creative outlet, I think fine arts, something that uses our hands, something that is being built without a knowledge base, without a algorithm that was trained on it, but like quite literally you just using your hands and having fun. Super important. It's also really good for your mental health. And become good enough at something to maybe turn into a hustle. Why the hell not, If you make paintings on the weekend and you can do a little show here and there and sell them $1,000 a piece or something, hey. Or maybe more. Right? So I'm gonna focus on the top, creativity and systems thinking. I believe that some of these, and these are just suggestions, that came to my mind, but obviously there's many, many things that you can do, but learning a musical instrument that has a method, that has technique, it's, will help you systems thinking, but at the same time, once you execute that musical instrument and you improvise, you can be very creative. Same with fine arts, writing, creative writing, all the way to thinking about prompting and how those two things could work together. Performance arts, so acting, stand-up comedy, that all requires a lot of creativity for improvisation, but at the same time, you need to have a framework of what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be saying. So exercises your memory and your systems thinking. Fixing things, I really like this one. I don't think a lot of people, understand that you can pretty much fix 70% of your problems at the house and at the car with some hand tools and just a couple YouTube videos. And it's very rewarding. You save money at the end of the day. And it shows you, especially like if you learn how to change your oil, let's say, there's a process, maybe you get a little messy the first time, but then you realize how easy it is, but you have to do it a certain way. You have to get a certain type of oil. You have to do a little bit of research. And it just shows you a bit how the system works within the larger system of your car. So those things, believe it or not, they fire neurons that at some point are going to be exercised, like they just went to the gym, to help you develop some more of that systems thinking within your work. Languages as well, even though some of the latest technology can translate in real time, I always imagine myself relying on something like that and losing internet or losing an AirPod and then not being able to communicate. I think that learning a language is huge. And then cooking, which I want to focus on for an example, because I think it's fun and I think it's incredibly creative, but also very systems thinking oriented. For example, let's think cooking a meal for two. And I put for two because you got skin in the game there. You're not going to microwave a Pop-Tart, when you're inviting someone for dinner, right? So systems thinking in creating a good dinner, a dinner that someone looks at you at the end and says, that was delicious. I can't believe that you did this. So you really need to find a good recipe, go shopping. You gotta do your prep. You gotta put that rice first because it takes forever. How many people have had the rice not ready when everything else is ready? So the rice takes a while. You gotta set the table. You make a steak, but you also have to wait for the steak to cool off and to kind of simmer down. Then you start your salad. You have to open the wine, let it breathe a little bit. Then you eat. At some point, you put the dessert, you clean, and you have some leftovers. But this shows a bit of project management, systems thinking of all the different phases that happen across time within this. So if you execute a good meal and everything is done properly cooked, so there's no raw chicken, and so everything is nice, and on time, you are halfway there. This is a very, very good skill. Conversely, cooking can also be very creative. Let's say you take those leftovers, you grab whatever else is in the fridge, you throw it in a pan, you do a little bit of praying, hopefully it'll be good, then you eat it, and then you can feel very proud that you just created something completely new. If it's something very, very good, you may want to write down the recipe and do it again. If it's not very good, then you can always order pizza. So moving from that, making sure that you get that creativity back into your life, and also the concept of systems thinking, we can start looking at product management, which is a discipline on its own. It started like in the 1930s by Procter & Gamble, when they started assigning folks to handle the strategy and the development of very specific products that did not have that kind of central hub. So in a typical SaaS triad, so software as a service, a little bit of what I do, you have a designer, an engineer, and a product manager, generally. The product manager is a key role in software development and hardware and most of the technology that you have right now. They're some of the smartest people I know, incredibly talented, but there's something interesting about product management is that they're generally a combination of a lot of soft skills. They don't code, they don't design, they're not particularly hyper specialized in something. They do a lot of everything and they do it really well, and they also connect dots incredibly well. So a product manager is not uncommon that is getting feedback from a customer, transferring it to the designer. The designer has a little overlap. If we do research, we customer face. The engineers, we don't want them to talk to the customers. We have the product manager that also is the owner of the business roadmap, related to sales, does the support, making sure that there's a support system for customers. There's the marketing side, and then eventually they respond to the leadership or the investors with presentations, updates. So they do a lot of stuff and they connect it all. So it's a pretty key role that I think we should really look into when we think about the future of the designer. So I think things are gonna start merging a little bit. I think a lot of roles, this is just my example, but I think in a lot of different practices, a lot of roles are gonna start being put in the blender. And you can see, for example, that FE, that's the front end, which is a little blurb that kind of got taken away from the engineer. I think the designer is gonna start absorbing that more and more. The customer's still happy there, but then the product manager and the designer are gonna start kind of having a bigger overlap. This is kind of related to the softening of the hard skills and the hardening of the soft skills. When you look at the designer that turns into a product manager, that designer needs to learn a lot of the soft skills or master them and really do really good at that. And then the product manager would have to learn how to design, or at least have some of those hard skills to know what's a good design versus a bad design. So which one do you think it's harder? I'm giving you a little bit of a clue there. And not to say that being a product manager is easy, and not to say that the array of soft skills, the gravitas that they ultimately put a lot of influence in the team is easy, but I do believe that from a PM to be a good designer is a lot harder than a good designer to become a good PM or merge them. So I think as designers, we are in an advantageous position when this blender sort of starts kind of moving roles around, and we start kind of coming up with a new generation of roles that are going to be relevant to the next generation of product development. And I think designers are going to have an advantage. Further, we have that creativity. Not to say that product managers aren't creative. Some of them are, very, very much. But we kind of have been vetted from the beginning about creativity and about design and that design process. So I think that's key. A big part of why what we do is a lot harder than going the other way around. I have met some fantastic product managers that have become designers, and I've met the other way around as well. I do think that ultimately it's a bit of a personality thing. Some designers could be a little bit more quiet, and the product manager tends to be a little bit more bombastic, more over-communicative. So that's a big deal. I don't think that should hinder someone looking into product management or bring in product management skills to their practice. It's just that you definitely have to network a little bit more, be okay talking to people, do this type of stuff, which I essentially think it's very, very useful and will add value to you as a professional. So at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a bit of that hybridization, and this is just my example. There could be more professions with more roles that kind of start merging like that, and I don't think it's going to be like, oh, you know, now I have to do the job of 2 people. I think it's just going to be different expectations, different skills. But you know, if we were to put it in today's terms, this would be kind of like the underlying current. Now, I know companies, for example, like Meta, when they hire a product designer, they don't consider you a hybrid, but they can tag you as such for certain projects. So they know which designers have that PM approach to things. So the connections, the being able to lead a little bit, you know, help an entire team to develop something together. There's a lot of psychology to PMs. So let's move to systems thinking, which I do think is something that's going to help designers quite a bit. It's more related, I would say, to the engineering side, but it is something that our advantage as designers is that we have an incredible attention to detail. So if we think about systems, we should be able to kind of articulate things to a deeper level and a more human level. At the end of the day, are humans the ones that are going to be using the products? So I think that it's pretty helpful. So this is a super overwhelming slide, I know, but I want to show you a little bit, and if you're a designer, a visual designer, I want you to learn how to make a state machine. I mean, my definition of state machine may be a little bit different than the traditional engineering one, but in this case, you can see on the left the different roles that you would have in a system. So you have an administrator, you have an MD, a doctor, IT, you have some notes underneath. And this is a living and breathing document that starts getting updated. In fact, what you see green, we added, I don't know, 3 months later after the white. This was a flow to track the performance of MDs that have to do a process over and over again. And we wanted to know how many of those processes they consume or they complete during a day, because a lot of reimbursements and payments are linked to that. We also learned that these MDs would have to declare where they're working that day, because that affects the rate in which those reimbursements are multiplied at. So important to know how many of these transactions happen at any given moment or during a given shift, and from where. So those are 2 different things that we need to track. So if you tell me, hey, my system needs to do this, how do you extrapolate that into a document that can help you see all the different parts of the experience, of the system, right? So you start from creating an organization. So when you create that organization, it means that so-and-so's practice suddenly paid the subscription. We can create them, okay? So if we create them, what options for location will they have? And what options for shift length do they have? What days can they work? Now that powers when you create a user, which is immediately to the right, the onboarding the user. So when you create your user account, Miguel, I may have Sarasota and Tampa versus Alex that may have Bradenton and Venice. So how do you assign those things? And what happens when you assign those things into the database, into the back end of the product? At that point, the MD, the user itself, has not touched the system. They don't have to interact with it yet. So here are some notes about that. And what you see under the red, that is the daily cycle of use, from login to logout, where you have the login, the actual usage. If a user pauses to go to the bathroom or to go for lunch, you should not account that time as a performance metric, but you should be able to pause it. But you need to tell the system, hey, I need you to stop counting time in this moment. So it's a state that has to be declared, hence state machine. Then you have the logout. What happens when you log out? Does that get saved? Where? And then down the line, all the way to auditing, where you can have logs. If someone wanted to audit your tracking performance and location for this MD on this date, there should be a log of it, right? Because there's, with a lot of these medical systems, there's regulatory, both for financial and for liability and all kinds of stuff. So this shows you a bit of a system from end to end, what we designers call end to end. and just shows you what a state machine could be. So if you could write a state machine, or you create a state machine with about anything really, but it's a very good first step to start developing a project. This is a little bit of UX writing. This is something that I did for a client. We were building an authoring tool also for medical forms, and I basically had to go and write what each individual item on the UI was, because we were still calling this the form, this the button, and there was no cohesiveness on what we were calling things, and I realized that we were calling things the same thing or different, and you really need to step up the communication. And if you're working with UI, and then eventually you're going to have training materials that are going to say you need to click here or tap there, things have to have names. But this is all stuff that it doesn't happen automatically. Someone has to do it. So that's why I think writing is very, very important for designers, especially UX writing. And here you define what these elements are, and you put it in a specification so that when it goes to engineering, so that when it goes to training, so that it goes to whoever is going to be looking at your specifications, they're like, oh, okay, that's the name of the inspector panel. Okay, authoring element menu. So this is also very important. From that very specific tool, which was stringing documents at a doctor's office, one of the things that I believe probably annoys you if you go to the doctor and you have to fill in that stack of a bunch of papers that they all ask you the same age, address, and you have to fill it over and over again. So this tool was supposed to handle a lot of that stuff. So you have the concept of you have data that's persistent from beginning to end, and then you have unique data in each individual form that it's unique to the form. However, you could go for a specific procedure and have to fill 5 forms, or you could go for something very simple, a follow-up. Let's say you only had to file one specific check-in one. But those 2 forms may have common denominators. So you really, once you do that state machine and you start thinking about all these different ways in which these products need to work, then you can start creating some of this fun, more visual diagrams that are, for an engineer or someone that's building this or you're putting this together, this is a lot easier to follow than a lot of just plain text explaining the same thing. These are some of the project cards that have all these kind of different permutations up front to show you what projects were completed, what were new but never started, which ones were shared, which ones were not, and a lot of the requirements underneath. These requirements are generally translatable. You have to be able to write them so they can be tested as acceptance criteria. So down the line, when you have the folks that test your tool, they're able to go through each individual requirement and check that it passes, check that it actually does what it's supposed to. If it doesn't, then you file a bug and hopefully you fix it and you bring it back to prioritization. But that's a bit of the software process that it's not necessarily taught to designers right away. We kind of have to either learn it by experience, or some designers just kind of don't, and they just sort of let the PM and the engineer do it. I think that that's a dangerous thing. I think this is when I'm talking about learning adjacent practices and disciplines to what you do. What it really means is to be able to sit in a meeting with engineers and know not exactly what they're talking about, but really follow what they're talking about. And to the point where you may even suggest a solution and they'll be like, whoa, well, the designer's telling us to do it. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Well, we thought about that. We're not going to do that, but wow, great. Often happens. So a quick recap on the skills. The hard skills, obviously, something you want to keep sharp, something you want to keep in tune, but you also want to keep very open to the new technology, the new automation, something that's going to allow you to remain in your field, hopefully for as long as you can. Also contrasted by the personal time, where we're going to be putting a lot of that creativity and process of design that kind of got taken away. We put it there so that we have a good creative outlet. And at the same time, in that personal time, if we can pick stuff that's going to help us with the systems thinking. Then product management, a discipline, a very interesting type of role in technology that I think everybody should at least learn the basics on and learn what those soft skills that are contingent to them are. Because I think that blender at some point is probably going to throw a lot of product management duties to us as designers. The systems thinking, just if anything, try to understand a state machine and be able to build one for your next project. It's a cool exercise, and if you work in software, that's going to help everybody kind of build requirements around that very easy. Business, we didn't touch that, but I think it's obviously very important when you have clients, when you have a company that you work for. Understand how they make money, understand if there's anything that you can do to make the situation better. Don't expect the business people to do it all. You know, I think you could still be creative and have some interesting business ideas. Also understand the tax code. I think that's super important. Communications, it's a big aspect of what we do. I think that the more communicative and the better we are at talking to people and going to events and networking, especially now that a lot of kids are just not going out that much, I think it's super important. And then flexibility. The flexibility, it's at the end, we don't have a lot of time for it. I know it's a super self-explanatory, but it could be one of the most important because it is truly the one that allows you to adapt, the one that allows you to pivot, to learn new things, and to just be okay when punches are thrown at you. Because you know, at the end of the day, flexibility is what is going to help you move forward into the next frontier, if you will. So, thank you very much. This was awesome. You guys are great. Hope I woke you up. Yeah, if we want to do Q&A.
Thank you. Yeah, here we are. Thank you very much, Miguel. That was great. I have a question, but I will save my question because we're paying customers here. Anyone have a question? Right off the bat. Oh, all right.
It's an easy one. I'm just wondering if you could tell me about the metal band that you drum in.
Yeah, tell us about your band.
Real quick.
Well, I've been playing probably 30 years more. My dad was a drummer, and I've been playing in bands all along. That's kind of been a bit of my side hustle. In fact, when I was at Ringling, not metal, but I played in a pretty busy jazz band, a Latin jazz band. And we played Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays, and it was awesome. Like just being able to pay for my food and all that stuff with music, that was awesome. So music's always been dear to me. I love drums. To me, it's a big creative outlet. And also, if you have frustrations in life and you're a little upset, it's great because they really don't break. The cymbals break and they're expensive, but you can really like hit them and it's not like you're gonna break them. So it's actually a very nice energy outlet as well. And metal's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the slide on the state machine. Kind of a derivative of Trello or something like that, but what software are you using to build that out so that people can access it?
Thank you. This is all Figma. The presentation and everything is Figma.
Oh, I'm going to ask a Figma question.
Yes.
So Figma just rolled out a bunch of AI tools. Have you had a chance to look at those?
I've seen the releases, but no, I haven't played with them yet.
For those of you not familiar, Figma has added on Figma Make, a suite of AI tools to help integrate coding and things. I was listening. I'm just going to throw this to you and have you comment on something from. Do you remember the CEO of Figma's name? I'm totally blanking. Dylan. Yeah. So he was talking about that in this AI world, the world you're talking about. That I love this phrase. He said, "Creativity is your moat. Right? Your creativity is the thing that's going to protect your career from AI and other things." Do you have sort of thoughts about that? I think you gave us some really good ways to developing that creativity.
Yeah, no, I think that it's very true, and I kind of alluded to it to the point when the PM, let's say, or the engineer starts trying to design, let's say. Not to say that they can't have creativity. I think everyone has creativity, but the developed muscle of creativity that we have as artists, plus what some may call talent, if you will, it's a pretty powerful thing, and it just needs to be adapted to the new world. It needs to be adapted to solving larger problems. I think that if you think small, oh, this is just a workflow to swipe a credit card and send a error message to my user, that's great, but you really need to think, you zoom out and really see the system and the state machine for that creativity to be as relevant as I believe you may be asking about.
Okay, over here.
Yes, can you tell me about the origin of the name state machine?
I believe the gentleman over there mentioned something. I don't know. This is kind of stuff that I inherited from just sitting in too many engineering meetings. But Alex Oss may know. Do you know? He's one of my engineering buddies. He's awesome. I do not know it exactly.
We're going to let Marty give it
Oh, there you go.
Hi, Marty Murphy from Department of Game Art and Virtual Reality. For me, state machines kind of date back to just simple flow chart. I would use them to describe a variety of kind of branching animations. My favorite example is a quarterback. And so a quarterback can run laterally, can run forward, but at the same time pivot their shoulders to throw the ball. And so we would create a network of different states to say, like, if that quarterback's going that way, they could still play this animation to go that way. So for our students, I would say the most common time that they deal with the state machine is with animation inside the Unreal game engine.
And in general, in software, in architecture, it's any time where there's like a decision made or you're going from one mode to another, right? I'm accepting input, I'm creating output, I'm, branching, and also, but also sort of the mode the software is working in, right? So if you think of a piece of software as a ergodic cybertext, to quote Espinosa, yeah, I can have obscure academic references to 90s cyber literature. But that concept of, an interactive feedback loop between the user and the machine, right? And so you're giving input to the machine and that tells it to move into a different state, and then it gives you some output back, right? That's one way to think about it. Hopefully that helps. I got a question here.
It's a very spontaneous question. So I'm just curious about your thoughts around how creativity could create new jobs when we grow with AI.
What was the last part? Or we would grow away?
With AI.
I think that once, because I still believe, we're in a transitional space, and who am I to say that we haven't always been in a transitional stage, but I think we are really in one. Once that kind of sorts out and there's that bit of blender that goes through the roles, at least for me in the software development world, we're going to be seeing creativity being an asset for some of the things that we talked about, like, if you apply systems thinking and if you start zooming out from problems and being able to spec something end to end with flirting a little bit with the engineering side so that there's logic and there's intention behind it, not just the UI. I think that's going to be super powerful. But yeah, I think there's going to be some other folks that are going to probably take a more analog approach, as Professor Dakin was talking about, the value of just making things by hand, making things unique, just creating that. There's always going to be someone that's going to buy a Ferrari versus a Lexus, let's say, because it's handmade, right? But the market's going to be a lot smaller. So, but craftsmanship, I think there's going to be a big influx in that, and there's going to be people out there that may want to pay. Like, for example, I do a lot of logos, right? I used to do a lot of branding. That was kind of a bit of my bread and butter for a long time, and I don't do logos anymore. Not as many, because logos, like, you can just get a logo made in a prompt, like in 2 seconds. Maybe I haven't really seen some really decent vector art coming out of this prompts, but not to say that that's not going to happen or it's happening already. So for me, like, that part is kind of gone. But the logo work that I do, I explicitly have a certificate that I give to my client that says that no AI was used in your logo. And I have, and I put a process. I love process. So I put all the process of your logo, from the typography study that I did originally, the fonts that I picked, the original sketches. I try to do a couple sketches, even if it's in Procreate, but I want them to see that there was a human sketching stuff. I put it in there, and then I put like the first 3 ideas, and then once they pick one, then we put the final one, and then I put my little signature. No AI was used, and the only AI I use is Adobe Illustrator. That was a line that I put in, but I don't do a lot of those. So it's I think we're going to have to wait and see, but there's always going to be room for creativity. I'm definitely an optimist there.
All right, who's Steve? You're proposing this hybrid or this transition that's happening. We're in an educational institution, and there's many around. Are you suggesting that these soft skills or power skills, as others might frame them in, are becoming more important? You mentioned that they're not regularly taught.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, should there be changes in our curriculum to improve those? Communication, human persuasion, empathy, interpersonal thoughts?
Certainly, and I think that those changes are happening. I think that that's why we're here right now, and that's basically what Professor Dakin is leading specifically at Ringling. And I know that there's analogs of Professor Dakin and a board of AI and innovation pretty much for every art college and pretty much every college. So yeah, things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And I think there's an equalization of skills and roles, and multiplied by the uncertainty of being in a transitional state. But I think that certainly our education is not going to be, I think that it's not going to evolve as well. I think everything is going to have to adapt. And what you mentioned, being able to somehow teach a lot of these things that would otherwise kind of come by experience, it's going to be also a little challenging. But you can put frameworks out there that people can work with. So yeah.
How you doing? Thank you very much for the presentation today.
You're welcome.
And one of the things I'd like to ask you is, or just say, is creativity is part of almost every process. You can't start any project without thinking why, how. And I think the creative process is going to be involved with everything in the future, regardless of the machine thinking and otherwise. Would you agree?
I agree. With the caveat that when you are used to the quote unquote traditional creative process of, let's say, designing an interface and iterating, or doing a logo and iterating and then doing a final, that a lot of that process is going to be automated, or it can be. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's where the trend is. But when you zoom out and you start thinking about the system, suddenly that little thing that sort of got automated becomes a string of things. And if you zoom out even more, you have a big view of things that are a process on themselves. And you could apply that creative process to the larger picture. So that's kind of just a shift in paradigm, I think, of the way in which creatives zoom in what is day in and day out, or what is their unit of work. It's going to have to get a little bit bigger so that you can really muscle that creativity, which is ultimately what sets us apart. But it is very true that a lot of these tools, without a creative approach, without a creative intention by someone that can creatively write a prompt, if you will, they don't output the same result as someone that didn't have that. So yes, in that other dimension, that's also true.
All right, last question over here.
SaaS software engineer here, so your talk resonated quite a bit. One thing that I tell aspiring computer science majors now is there is the blending of this UX product manager role, but it works both ways, because now the non-creatives can go and vibe code up an interface very quickly. I think the one thing we have to recognize is the bar has been raised quite a bit. Because of that blending, we need to produce graduates in education that are much further along than they were in the beginning. I wondered if you saw it the same way.
Yeah, certainly. I think that the democratization of information and a lot of these processes are going to allow a lot of people to be designers. And when you leverage a model that's trained on good design, chances are very high that they're going to output something that's going to look okay. That's why I think that, at least for me personally, working in healthcare and working in some regulated kind of more complex problems, I'm still lucky that I can do a lot of this stuff in a custom way, if you will. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there. I think the tide kind of raised in the sense that there's going to be a lot of work out there that's going to be I'm gonna say it's great. It's probably adequate, which is gonna be good enough for a lot of people, and maybe it doesn't even involve a designer. It maybe just involves someone that's just, oh, why would I pay a designer? Let me do it myself, and you know, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine for the purpose. But I do think that there's going to be a much higher tier, and what you said, you know, raising the standards. It's very true, where you're going to have a creative and someone that really knows design well and knows user experience. At the end of the day, a lot of these products are being used by humans, which are flawed, you know, which make mistakes, forget things, don't see well. You know, the ergonomics and the human factor is something that, you know, you really can't replicate, or yet at least. And I think that that's what is going to set that tier apart, when you have a creative that really understands that and is also, in a weird way, able to do a lot of the things that maybe some of the engineers and some of the PMs were able to do in the past. So it can go either way.
All right, thank you very much, Miguel.
Thank you.